Hello, and welcome to the Techno Buffalo Digital Camera Workshop. I'm Mike Perlman, and today I'm reviewing the Pentax Q. Does the Q stand for quite lame, or a quality digital imaging device? Find out after this awesome intro. I'm back with the camera that represents the Lollipop Guild. The Pentax Q is the world's smallest interchangeable lens system camera on the market. And the reason is because this thing packs a back illuminated 12 megapixel 1/2.3 inch CMOS sensor. That is the smallest sensor on any interchangeable lens camera in the intergalactic solar system. Let's put the sensor in perspective. Compared to the Olympus EPM1, which has a 4/3 size sensor, and the Nikon 1J1, which has a 1-inch size sensor, the Pentax Q's 1/2.3 inch sensor looks like a gnat stacked up to a praying mantis. So let's talk image quality. Because the Pentax Q gave us a point-and-shoot size sensor, we had more of a point-and-shoot performance. I shot side by side with the Canon PowerShot S100 and Nikon Coolpix P7100. In bright light, the Pentax Q rivals the S100. Very good performance in bright light. Very few chromatic aberrations. I just found a few purple fringing experiences along some highly contrasted edges, but that was about it. I favored the Canon as far as its high ISO performance. The Pentax Q is still a very good high ISO performer, but I think the Nikon P7100 and Canon S100 benefit from having those larger sensors which can soak up more light. The Pentax Q, little noisier. Also, this camera shoots 1080p 30 frames per second video recorded in the H.264 codec. Now, video quality in bright light, pretty darn good, but anytime there's any hint or thought of darkness coming into the shot, this camera is going to be noisy. It's going to noise up the place. So that's another downside. I preferred the S100's HD video and the P7100's video to the Q. So to recap, the Pentax Q rivals some of the best point-and-shoot cameras on the market when it comes to image quality. Let's talk lenses. The Q shifts with an f1.9, which is a very nice bright aperture lens. It's a prime lens, which means it doesn't zoom. It's just flat right on there. And it has manual focus ring right on it. Very nice lens. We also have this optional viewfinder that can attach right to the top, which is a hot shoe of this camera. Very nice, and it is optimized for the prime. Now there are also other lenses. There's a 5 to 15 millimeter zoom lens. There's also a fisheye and 2 toy camera lenses, which are so small that they look like they came out of a 50-cent machine. And that's part of the Q's allure. This thing is tiny. Even the Canon PowerShot S100 is taller than it. The Pentax Q makes the Olympus EPM1, the mini pen, look like a monster truck. And I absolutely love the styling of the Q. It's got this retro front grip panel here. It also has a front dial with 4 settings that dictate different digital filters and color accents. We have a rear mounted control dial. There's a rear 4-way directional pad with ISO and white balance, flash, self-timer settings. We also have an exposure compensation, dedicated exposure compensation button, and Pentax green button, which is customizable. The camera's got a great hot shoe on top for adding an additional flash or a viewfinder, and it also has a great built-in flash that pops all the way up, and it looks like Johnny Five from Short Circuit. This flash is very bright, so I had to dial back the EV steps while I was shooting with the Q. Also, it has some great manual controls. Shutter speed that can dip down to 30 seconds with a bulb mode. We also have white balance grid selection, color grid, and we have a built-in neutral density filter and an ISO that reaches 6400. Aside from that, the Q and Pentax as a brand, in my opinion, has the best digital filters, in-camera built-in digital filters you can ask for out there. So if you don't have Photoshop, if you don't have access to advanced photo editing programs, software, most Pentax cameras will really do you well. This thing has 19 different digital filters with individually adjustable parameters. The best thing about this camera also is that any of those 19 digital filters can be applied after you take a picture, so you can just shoot raw, you could shoot however you want, and then it's applied right after the fact, saves as a copy. You could also develop raw images right from within the camera. It's a great thing. This camera really is a digital tool belt. I did have a few gripes with the Pentax Q. One, it has a short battery life. 2, the LCD screen, it has a 460k pixel resolution. I think it needs to be bumped up to like a 920 in order to be competitive, because it got a little grainy at times. Also, I found the firmware on the Q to be a little sluggish. At times, the AF system was a little slow to respond. Also, when I captured certain images, depending on the filter or depending on if I was taking raw images, it took a long time to process before I could take the next picture. Or I could shut the camera off, or I could jump into playback mode. So firmware, a little bit slow. Aside from that, my major gripe with this camera is the price. It's $750 shipped with the standard prime lens. And let's factor in some things here. If you go for the 5 to 15 millimeter zoom lens, that's about $240. If you go for the fisheye lens, I think that's another little under $100. We're talking about a little over $1,000 for a camera with the basic 1/2.3 inch sensor. And that's just too steep, especially with the competitors out there. You've got the Micro Four Thirds cameras. Yeah, they're bigger. They're not too much bigger. You've got the Olympus EPM1. You've got the new Nikon 1J1 camera out there. You've got a lot of the Sony NEX series. So the Pentax Q needs to be priced a little more reasonably. But overall, I have to be honest, the Q was one of my favorite little cameras I've ever shot with. This thing was just a blast. The amount of times I went, "This is awesome," while I was unboxing this camera, totaled way past 100. I mean, this thing is just, it's a lot of fun. It really looks like a little toy camera that is capable of some pretty high-powered performance. I would recommend the Pentax Q to a beginner or intermediate photographer or film student, somebody who wants to retain the awesome size of a point-and-shoot camera, but does not want to get bogged down with expensive lenses and a cinder block around their shoulder, like Nikon D7000 or EOS 5D Mark II. Even though they're awesome cameras, this is a totally different market. So this has been the Pentax Q review. I'm Mike Perlman for Techno Buffalo. Be sure to go to the site for the full review with image samples and video samples of this guy, and any other camera related news, reviews, or stories, go to technobuffalo.com. I will see you guys later.